Hello there. As head of state, the federal president or Bundespräsident mainly takes on representative activities and has relatively little power in international comparison. In parliamentary crisis situation, however, he can play an important role. The federal president is the head of state of the Federal Republic of Germany. He represents the unity of the state. Beyond this representative role, the Basic Law assigns only limited political powers to him. After the experiences of the Weimar Republic, the Parliamentary Council deliberately restricted the powers of the president. The president of the Reich, elected by the people for 7 years, had considerable power under the Weimar Constitution. He could override fundamental rights and govern with emergency decrees. Reich President von Hindenburg made disastrous use of these powers in the final phase of the Weimar Republic. According to the will of the legislators of the Basic Law, such power should not again lie in one hand. The federal president is elected by the Federal Assembly for 5 years. One re-election is permitted. This election is the sole task of the Federal Assembly, by the way. It is made up of the members of the Bundestag, the federal parliament, and an equal number of delegates who are sent by the state parliaments according to the size of the parliamentary groups. Most of them are members of the state parliament, but they are also local politicians and public figures. The election takes place without debate. Any German who has reached the age of 40 can be elected. As federal president is elected, whoever obtains the majority of the votes in the Federal Assembly, that's the so-called absolute majority. If no candidate achieves an absolute majority in the first and second ballot, a majority of the votes cast in the third ballot, and then with a relative majority, is sufficient. When constructing the Federal Assembly, the Parliamentary Council was guided by two fundamental principles of the constitutional order. The representative principle, that means that the federal president is elected by representatives of the people, and the federalist principle, the federal and the state parliaments are equally involved in the election. Again and again, the direct election by the people is discussed. It would override these principles in the election of the federal president of the principal. The office of federal president would thus receive its own legitimation independent of parliament, which is not intended by the Basic Law, and it would be just a ruse because he still has no powers. The federal president has the usual functions of a head of state, and this includes, of course, the representation of the Federal Republic of Germany internally and externally. Internally, through his public appearances at state, social, and cultural events, through speeches on special occasions, through visits to the federal states and communities, and of course externally through state visits and the reception of foreign state guests. And the representation of the Federal Republic of Germany under international law is also there. And it's by signing treaties with other states, by formally appointing the German diplomatic representatives, and accepting the letters of authentication from the foreign diplomats. When exercising further rights, the federal president cannot act independently, but only in cooperation with other constitutional bodies. His orders and decrees require the countersignature of the federal chancellor or the responsible federal minister that is needed in order to be valid. In this way, they assume political and parliamentary responsibility and not the president. And that applies to, for example, signing of laws. Laws are executed and promulgated by the federal president. That means signed and published in the Federal Law Gazette. According to the prevailing opinion, the federal president can check whether the law has been passed in a constitutional form and whether its content corresponds to the Basic Law. In 1991, for example, Federal President Richard von Weizsäcker refused to sign the law on the privatization of air traffic controls because, according to the Basic Law, air traffic management was managed by the federal government. In October 2006, Federal President Horst Köhler did not sign the law to reorganize air traffic control because it was incompatible with the Basic Law or the Grundgesetz, my God, it's very hot here today. In December 2006, he rejected the Consumer Information Act because, in his view, it contradicted the Basic Law, which, as a result of the federalism reform, forbids the municipalities from transferring tasks by federal law. And there is the appointment of federal ministers. The federal president must appoint and dismiss the federal ministers proposed by the federal chancellor. He can only raise concerns about a ministerial candidate. And he appoints the federal judges, the federal civil servants, officers, and non-commissioned officers. Here too, the federal president will follow the suggestion of the government or other constitutional bodies, except in the case of extremely wrong decisions. Federal President Lübke, for example, rejected the appointment of a federal judge because of his Nazi past. The federal president exercises the right of pardon on behalf of the whole country. The federal president can act politically independently in certain parliamentary crisis situations. If a candidate does not receive an absolute but only a simple majority in the third ballot, the federal president can appoint him chancellor of a minority government or dissolve the Bundestag, the federal parliament, and call for new elections. In view of stable majorities, this case has not yet occurred. And if the federal chancellor does not find a majority in a vote of confidence, the federal president can dissolve the Bundestag at the request of the federal chancellor. The Bundestag was dissolved by the federal president when Willy Brandt in 1972, Helmut Kohl in 1982, and Gerhard Schröder in 2005 submitted a motion to bring about new elections and thus try to get a secure parliamentary majority. And the federal president also has an integration function. The importance of the office of the federal president goes far beyond these formal competencies. As an independent personality standing above the party political dispute, he represents the common. He should convey trust, set moral standards, give advice, have a balancing effect in controversies, and last but not least, radiate dignity. All previous incumbents have succeeded in fulfilling this integration function, even if they have set different accents. As a rule, their popularity level is higher than that of all or most other politicians. The office of federal president is rated positively by more citizens than any other political office. And of course, I must not forget to name the previous 12 presidents. Theodor Heuss from the Liberals was federal president from 1949 to 1959. He was the first federal president. He was considered a stroke of luck for the young republic. It was thanks to his leadership that the office of federal president was held in high esteem. Heuss succeeded in breaking down prejudices of the world public against the Germans. In 1959, it was even considered that an amendment to the Basic Law would allow him a third term. Theodor Heuss declined in order not to set a precedent. And Heinrich Lübke from the Conservatives was federal president from 1959 to 69. He was a shoemaker's son that visited 35 states. The CDU politician had reluctantly made himself available for the highest office in the state because he considered himself unsuitable. Criticism was leveled at his work during the Nazi era because, among other things, he had worked on buildings for the missile weapon program operated with forced laborers. And then we have Gustav Heinemann from the Social Democrats. He was federal president from 69 to 74. He was the first Social Democrat to be head of state in the Federal Republic. The Social Democrat was elected to the highest state office with the votes of the then opposition of the Liberals, a sign of the future government coalition formed by the Social Democrats and the Liberals. Heinemann appeared strict and at times sour, but he was considered a model of moral integrity. And then came Walter Scheel from the Liberals. He was federal president from 74 to 79. He was known for his love of singing. Walter Scheel was the second Liberal to come to power. The popular head of state didn't shy away from sitting and singing Hoch auf dem gelben Wagen. This is a very funny song. As president, as before, as foreign minister, he campaigned for the Eastern Bloc policy of Germany that time, and Germany will never repeat the mistakes and crimes of the past. That's what he assured tirelessly. And then came Karl Carstens from the Conservatives from 79 to 84. He was an advocate of conservative values such as hard work and a sense of duty, family, and national pride. Irrespective of his demure Hanseatic nature, Karl Carstens endeavored to maintain close contact with the population. During his tenure, he walked more than 1,500 kilometers in hiking shoes, which is why he was also called the Walker of the Nation. And then came Richard von Weizsäcker, also conservative from 84 to 94. He earned a reputation as the conscience of the nation. His speech on May 8th in 1985, the anniversary of the end of the war, in which he unconditionally acknowledged the historical guilt of the Germans, will not be forgotten. The Christian Democrat was committed to reconciliation with the East. After the collapse of the Eastern Bloc, he urged caution when the GDR and the Federal Republic grew together. After him, there was Roman Herzog, also conservative, from 94 to 99. The former president of the Federal Constitutional Court promoted Berlin as the seat of government soon after taking office. His closeness to life and the people brought recognition to the Christian Democrat. His Berlin speech in April 1997, in which he denounced the standstill in politics and society, was of domestic political significance. He warned at the time, a jolt must go through Germany. And it was quite an important speech at that time. And then came Johannes Rau from the Social Democrats. He was president from 1999 to 2004. The long-standing Social Democratic head of government here in North Rhine-Westphalia was nicknamed Brother Johannes, so Brother John, because of his firm grasp of the Bible and was considered a balancing and reconciling character. He quickly made it clear that he not only wanted to be the president of all Germans, but also the contact person for all citizens of foreign origin in Germany. Johannes Rau urged tolerance and the integration of minorities. Following him was Horst Köhler from the Christian Democrats. He was president from 2004 to 2010. The former head of the International Monetary Fund, the IMF, did not have an easy start in office. Critics accused the financial experts of being too politically inexperienced. But with perseverance and openness to the concerns of the citizens, he quickly gained respect. In the course of his tenure, Horst Köhler developed increasing independence. The Christian Democratic politician often took positions on political issues, and he refused to sign some laws because of constitutional concerns. And then came Christian Wulff from the Conservatives. He was president from 2010 to 2012 only. After Federal President Christian Wulff submitted an unprecedented request to have his immunity lifted, he resigned in spring 2012. Previously, there had been reports for months about possible taking advantage of his time as Prime Minister. However, he was acquitted of this charge in 2014 by the Hanover Regional Court. As Federal President, he failed. But with his sentence, Islam belongs to Germany, he initiated a debate that still has an impact today. And then came Joachim Gauck, the only independent federal president from 2012 to 2017. The theologian and civil rights activist Joachim Gauck became federal president in 2012 on the initiative of the Social Democrats and the Greens. Gauck shined with brilliant speeches, but also repeatedly interfered controversially in day-to-day business. And then, last but not least, Frank-Walter Steinmeier from the Social Democrats. He's federal president since 2017 until today, and the long-serving foreign minister was elected in 2017, as I said. Frank-Walter Steinmeier was the first German head of state to speak at Yad Vashem, at the central commemoration event for the 5th World Holocaust Forum on January 23rd in 2020 in Jerusalem. And he began his speech in Hebrew. And so the office of the president here in Germany is, as I said, an office that is of very high regard. And I hope it stays this way. And I'll see you in my next video. Schau vorbei.